everyone, this is Lulu with As You Wish Pottery, and in this video we'll be painting this beautiful Desert Dreams Platter. For this project we have our lesson plan to guide us along, so feel free to grab that before we get started. So to begin, we're going to place the circle sticker on the surface of the platter, not too in the middle of the platter, just a little bit more top right, and we're going to press it down using our hands or a clean bottle of paint. After you're done with that, you're going to use a large square brush to paint the platter with one messy coat of Pool Party on the lower half, and with the same brush, we're going to paint the top half of the platter with one messy coat of Blue Heaven. Once you have a nice layer of the blues set down on the surface, you're going to go in and just add another layer here and there wherever the space needs it. So wherever the surface feels like it's drying too quickly or it's looking a little too dull, you're going to go in and just add a few more brush strokes and things like that just to even out the colors nicely. Once you're done there, you're going to remove the sticker gently using the angled side of a detail brush. So here I set my platter aside to dry, and then while the platter was drying, I went ahead and traced my images onto tissue paper using the tracing method. And if you want any more information on that, you can just look on the lesson plan where this step is explained a little bit better. So after you have it traced onto tissue paper, you're going to transfer it over to the platter using a marker. Keep in mind though that the platter is pretty large, so you might have to elongate your cactuses and whatnot, and you can do that by just slightly moving the page up. Now, we got to talk a little bit about sgraffito and what sgraffito is. So sgraffito is just the act of scratching paint. So whenever we're working with this type of project and whatnot, we want to make sure that our paint is well layered and that we have given it enough time to dry to the touch. So for this project, we're going to work fast and we're going to work wet. Keep that in mind. So for the first step, all I'm doing is using a round brush or a small round brush to paint the top parts of my cactus to the left, or to the right, I'm sorry, with 1 to 2 coats or 2-ish coats of water yolk first. And then once that's done, I'm going to go in and use a medium round brush and paint the bottom half of that same cactus, the lower half of the arm, and the lower half of the knob with 2 messy coats of double mint. So what you see here is that everything's still kind of wet. I'm dipping in my brush, I'm painting in nice sections, kind of making sure that everything's well coated. And then once I'm done with that double mint, I'm going to use that same small brush to paint another messy coat on top of the yellow bits to kind of mix in with the mint a little bit here and there. I'm also painting the flower too, so if you see, I started with the water yolk on that flower top part, and that's about 1 to 2 coats on there. And then once the cactus is painted, I'm going to go in and finish the flower, so I'm giving the cactus some time to dry, and I'm just using a small round brush to paint the bottom half of the yellow flowers with 1 to 2 coats of orange crush. So as I mentioned earlier, we're working with things wet, so as you see, my paint isn't fully dry just yet, and that doesn't mean I'm going to stop. I'm going to keep going. So the next step is going to be to use your long detail brush to paint some wiggly lines to outline the cactus in a way and to give it some kind of accent. Keep in mind that we will be scratching these, so you want to make sure that they're even thickness and that they're also all painted at the same time, so that way we can ensure that things dry at a certain pace and we can tackle things that are drier and things like that. So as you see, I started with the arm, then I did the big body, and then I did the little knob above, and then I'm going to paint the little stems underneath the yellow flowers using 1 to 2 coats of Teal Tomorrow. So as you see, this color is really dark, so I'm making sure that all my lines are thick and that everything's well coated, so that way when it comes time to scratch, I can have a nice surface to do that on. Okay, so next we're going to let the platter dry for just 5 minutes at least. Then once the pieces are dry to the touch, we're going to use the wooden skewer to scratch zigzag-like lines over the dark teal lines, and we're going to scratch the little accent lines or prickles, or I call them spikes. Those kinds of details and things like that, we'll be doing that as we're going. I also have a dry brush near me just in case I need to brush off any excess paint that sticks on. And I'm also working on all the drier parts first, just to ensure that there's no blobs or paint that gets smeared. I also don't want my paint to be running and coloring other sections and things like that, so I don't want my paint to move. So I want to make sure that everything's dry to the touch. and I'm going as fast as I can just to ensure that I have a really nice momentum going and that all my little accents and things like that feel very organic. Here I just wanted to show you guys how I do my flowers. I start from one end and then I go all the way to the other side and just kind of wiggle it here and there, and that's it. That's how I create the flowers. Next, we will use the same heavy layering process to paint the cactuses on the left side since they're painted the same way. So as you see, these cactuses have been split into 4 sections that are painted the same. So we're going to use the small round brush for all of the sections, and I pretty much split 2 sections into yellow and then the other 2 sections are going to be mint. So for now, I'm just using the small round brush and 2 heavy coats of Tweety Bird to paint that top half of that section. Then I'm going to use the same brush and about 2 coats of water yolk. Make sure to rinse your brush in between, obviously. And then once I have 2 coats of water yolk on that section on top of the Tweety Bird, I'm going to do 2 coats of orange crush. So for this part, I'm making sure that the coats are well done and that I have a good solid 2 coats. Then I'm going to rinse off my brush and I'm going to go over all 3 sections to ensure that the colors blend together really nicely and that I have enough surface to remove paint later on. Here we're going to paint the flowers above the middle cactus just like we did on the first cactus. So I'm just using the small round brush and 1 to 2 coats of water yolk and orange crush. Now we're going to rinse off our small round brush, and with it we're going to paint the remaining sections of the cactuses to the left with 2 coats of double mint on the top half and 2 to 3 coats of teal tomorrow on the lower half. So just make sure that you blend the colors in between where they meet. This is just done by layering paint with one color and then layering the other one a little bit higher than that, or a little higher to where it touches the other color, and just kind of brushing them together to kind of blend the colors up together. Keep in mind though that you can just change to a smaller brush if you have a section that's kind of small and you're kind of unsure about how to go about it. You can definitely change to a small detail brush or something like that, and then you can continue using the small round brush to go over the coats. And remember, 2 to 3 heavy coats. You got this. Now I'm going to use the detail brush to add some stems over the flowers to connect them to the cactuses, and I'm also going to paint a few spikes around the cactus with teal tomorrow. For the little spikes, I just want to remind you that they have to dry at the same time as the rest of the cactus, so you don't want to make them too heavy or too thick. Next, I'm going to use the wooden skewer again to scratch off the outlines and prickles inside the cactuses. I'm also going to scratch a line outside on the outside spikes, and I'm going to add any accents and lines to the flowers as I like. So remember to have a dry brush just in case you have any dry bits of paint to brush them off, so that way you're not working on dry stuff all over the place, you know. Make sure to brush it off before you carry on. I like to do my heavy, bigger lines first, so like all the outlines and things like that, and then I go in and do all my little dashes and dots and things like that on the inside shapes. For this part, feel free to get creative with it, have fun, and if at any point the paint starts drying out on you, I just suggest that you use a damp sponge to kind of get the surface wet again. But remember, you have to let it dry to the touch, so you're going to have to wait a couple minutes to let it dry again. And then continue on until your whole cactuses are detailed and sgraffitoed and they look awesome. So keep going until you're done. Even though we're almost done scratching, I just want to remind you to work on the areas that are the driest first, and then move on to the wetter things later, so that way you're giving them enough time to dry. Okay, so now we're on to the last steps. So for this next step, we're going to use a toothbrush and we're going to splatter the platter with black lab. Lastly, we're going to use a round sponge to paint the rim with black lab. So remember, to paint a really nice good rim, you want to make sure that you have a lot of paint on that edge of your sponge, and then just gently glide it so that way you can encase the rim really nicely. Alrighty, so here's the platter as we painted it in this video. I'm also going to include the fired version so you see how all the colors look once everything's fired. Everything brightens up and it looks super magical and super dreamy. So thank you so much for painting with me today. Have a great one. Bye-bye.